I'm Tobias. I'm the Business Development Director at DEPT. And next up, we have our panel, namely titled How Social Commerce is Transforming Online Shopping Experiences, where we'll dive into the impact of this relatively new technology on driving revenue online. And joining me, we have Renata from eBay and Luca from Inter Milan, as well as our very own Ali from BYTE. Hey folks, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Amazing. All right. Well, look, so for context for you folks at home, Renata, Luca, Ali, and we had some chats over the course of the coming couple of weeks. I'm personally super excited about this panel. And Luca, we're going to actually start with you, if that's okay with you, to kick things off. Is that all right?
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So, for context for you folks at home, Luca is the CRO at Inter Milan. And I think what I would love to do as a starting point is to take us under the hood of Inter Milan, Luca. And of course, as a football club, you're in the business of winning football matches and inspiring fans. But for the purposes of this conversation, what I'm hoping to do is look into another aspect of the club. And that's how you generate revenue and how that's changed with technology. So, the question, could you give us some background of the company's recent moves into e-commerce and how that ladders up to your views on your overall business strategy? Luca.
Hi, Tobias, and hello everyone. So first of all, a pleasure, and apologize for my voice because it was a long night. Last night we came back very late from Barcelona, and as you say, you know, at the end of the day, we try to make revenues in different way, but we're a football team. So the passion and the emotion of last night was quite big. So the night was very long. So back to your question. So I just want to step back just to give a context for the audience that is here today. You know, like sport industries face, like every other industries, changes in the last couple of years. You know, pandemic, war, other issues combined to a different way to consume sport, different way to watch sport on TV or on different devices. This change pushed us and the full industry to reconsider also our strategy in terms of revenue, reconsider how we can grow in terms of revenue. Because in the sport industry and football industry, revenue are usually, the big pots are coming from selling tickets, the rights, and of course the trade of players. But you know, the Gen Z, the new generation, push us really a lot to think about a different way to engage, a different way to sell something, be a audio, a video, or a merchandise, because the consumer sport is totally different. And of course, the digital assets that you mentioned before, they increase attention, and they are exactly the elements that we consider in our journey, that this class guarantee us the growth of a football team or any other sport company right now. So for us, we started this change a couple of years ago. As you mentioned, early July, we unveiled our new digital ecosystem, because I like to talk about ecosystem. That's extremely important. You know, if you want to engage, if you want to maximize the fans, the number of people that follow you every single day, people that are watching content in our social media, we need to create some ecosystem that everything is linked. So our ecosystem is the web and the app that we recreate a new experience, especially give opportunity to utilize our quantity. So watch our images, watch behind the scene, watch what the team is doing every single day. On the other hand, we also unveiled for the first time our own e-commerce, linked on that, where we want to offer seamlessly, you know, a new platform that people can go from our web, watch content, go on our Inter TV channels, go on the merchandise or e-commerce, buy merchandise, find a specific collaboration or specific products, then maybe go back again on the app, and then buy the tickets and come watch the game. So that for us is the the digital assets. I will finish your question. Digital assets are important to unlock potential to our wider community, and then it's extremely important for us. So I like to talk, we always talk internally, like it's our journey, in the journey of digital ecosystem as a football club.
Amazing. Luca, you're right to start with the fact that your voice might be a bit lost. The fact that you're still here sitting with us is a surprise to me, to be honest with you. I feel like I need to thank you even more in light of last night. But
oh, it's a pleasure. You know, that's it probably was extremely harder to come here after lose 6-0. So.
Yeah. Fair enough. Look, I'll take those odds. Renata, welcome and thanks so much for joining us as well. So for folks at home, Renata is one of the amazing folks that works in the marketing team at eBay. And Renata, I have an interesting question for you. Could you give us an impression of the secret sauce that underpins the commercial success of eBay?
Yes. Hi, Tobias. So simply put, I think for eBay, like if we narrow it down, it's really our buyers and sellers. We have this incredible community of like over 138 million active users. A lot of them are from these great, passionate, enthusiast communities, watch collectors, sneakerheads, motorheads, and so on, that are really chasing their own opportunity. And I would also say that eBay is so closely tied to culture, because we've been around over 25 years, just a great cultural barometer for, what's new and what's happening with consumer behavior. I think like one of the examples top of mind is Queen's Gambit came out on Netflix. Like we saw like a surge searches for chess sets and such. And similarly, for watches, for anyone who's a watch collector, Omega released a Moon's watch, and like they had teased it out on Instagram, on social. So 3 days before the launch, like we saw a surge of 2,000% on searches just on eBay alone. So it's so great that a lot of buyers know essentially go to eBay to really look for like what's new and what's upcoming in terms of product releases. And in addition to that, I would say also it's really like our depth of inventory. You can really find everything and anything on eBay. I've connected with so many people that have found unique on there as well. One seller comes to mind, Reichbach, who is a seller at Time Titans on eBay, who found this really unique vintage watch. It was a Wells Row watch on eBay that his journey started there, buying that watch, and after years, he acquired the IP of that watch brand and essentially relaunched the brand. So it's just super incredible connection that people can have to items on there.
Awesome. I guess you can also get some Inter Milan jerseys on eBay too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think something that you both touched on to some degree is that I think for both Inter Milan and eBay, I think it's safe to say that community is one of the key ingredients to either your club or platform success. And on that topic, I want to dive in a bit more into the aspect of community. So Renata, can you give us an impression of how you view community and how you seek to translate community into commercial success?
Yeah, so I think for us, as I mentioned, like eBay's investing heavily in these verticalized businesses and really wants to be part of these communities that drive so much authenticity in our content. And I think particularly part of, for our social team on eBay, we are part of those communities we're often marketing to. So I think of like my counterparts, Ryan, who's a sneakerhead, or Jonathan, who's a motorhead, and we show up at our community events. We've gone to SneakerCon, particularly one person on my team, JR Weidman, he's a community manager, and he co-creates content with people at these events, like ComplexCon and such. And even so, in like luxury categories, eBay will be a founding partner at the Re-Luxury Summit in Geneva. So we've really invested heavily in not just connecting with, but being part of communities. And also, I'd say that we create content for these communities, particularly for watches. Our social team has created this content series called Sellers Club, where hear our sellers telling stories about not only their own collections as collectors, but also like showing the passion, that expertise that they have as sellers. And this content was made by my team because we are watch enthusiasts, we're collectors ourselves, and it's I think what we weren't seeing in the market ourselves. And I just think that we're positioned to do this authentically because eBay, we really support our sellers and we help them build their own brands with that marketing, comms, and social support that I think sets us apart from other platforms.
Amazing. And Ali, I think you also recently started to work with the eBay folks in the UK, right?
Yes, we did, yeah. And actually, it's really interesting to hear the seller stories because that's one of the key things which we're trying to bring to the fore, because that's, to your point of like the special sauce, like those are the stories which really resonate with consumers and I think set eBay apart. So the ability to surface those stories in a way that people find interesting is, I think, what the mission we're on, and I think what sets eBay apart compared to competitors.
I love the fact that a London bus just drove by in the background of your alley. All right, Luca, I actually wanted to ask you a similar question. What are your thoughts with respect to community and the importance of community in Inter Milan? I think it's quite clear. Actually, I mentioned this to you before, but one of my best friends in Barbados, like in the Caribbean, is an avid Inter Milan fan. But yeah, how do you view the aspect of community and connecting that to commerce with respect to Inter Milan and the business that you're in? Sorry, Luca, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Sorry, I think Renata said the right words: authenticity. For a football club, this is probably the most important thing. You need to be authentic. You need to be, linked to your tradition. The values of the club are the most important things. I need to be very careful to touch when I produce, a new jersey or when I create a new song for the stadium. So the passion and emotion that the football club creates is our core business. So if you think about community, I'll give you an example. Like a couple of years ago, the owner of this club changed our logo because to project the club in the future. And at the beginning, I say, no, I'm not doing that because touch the logo of a club is just change the value, change the identity for my community that are all my fans. At the end, we're working on that, but we create something that was an evolution because you need to be extremely meaningful since your beginning. So Inter is by name is international. So that's what we want to talk about it. And then to transform the value international and particularly from Milan. When we redesign our proposition, commercial proposition, we want to create an experience that is just much more than football. So when you come to our eCommerce, when you come to our apps, you can see also the contamination that we are doing with other brands. For example, Moncler. You can see why Inter and Moncler, because they're both from Milan. They're both interesting to create something unique for the audience that love Milan, the audience that love some specific values or fashion in the city of Milan. Then you can see and can buy and can experience in our e-commerce right now. So that was, for example, for us, the reason why we decided to change and transform completely all our digital touch points, because we try to make our global audience closer than ever to us, because that's the important thing. I can offer experience with the Milanese fans. They come to the stadium because they're based in Milan. But I have millions of fans based in Indonesia, in Brazil, your friends, in the Caribbean area. So I need to offer something different. And of course, like what we said before, the digital asset to create specific content, to create specific products to sell, is working extremely well. Digital elements help us to be connected widely and in a quick way.
Amazing. Well, look, I think based on the two topics that we just tackled, sort of overall business strategy, the secret sauces that underpin your club and the platform, and then, of course, the aspect of community that's so sort of ingrained into your brands. I think what I'd like to tackle next is social and commerce coming together into this new proposition and the tech associated with it, because I think it really brings together those two aspects very clearly. And Ali, I think, so now that you're here, being the MD at BYTE, I think you deal with this topic every day with all the brands that come to us for advice. And my question to you is, could you explain how you've seen the rise of social commerce influence brands' digital strategies? And firstly, what is it? And has it changed that aspect, this whole sort of transactional nature of commerce online?
Yeah. I think we had Web 2 and now we're having Web 3. And I almost think we have social and now we're moving into a different space, which I'm super excited about, because I think initially when social came onto the scene, it broke down the barriers between brands and consumers, and it enabled us to have this like two-way conversation, which was like so exciting for brands. But if we were being really honest with ourselves, the digital tools lagged behind from a commerce perspective. They were very separate and siloed. And I think that's changing, which is really exciting. And brands on the forefront are, I think, Luca's point, bringing together the different ecosystems so they work together rather than feeling separate. And to Renata's point, like surfacing the authentic stories that consumers want to know that make you different as a brand and bringing those things together. So, I mean, we've always been social. We like look for inspiration in other people. That is what social does. Social media or digital media does. It enables you to be inspired by other people outside of your network. The next step, and what brands are doing now, is actually enabling us to shop that inspiration, or understand how we might be able to bring to life more of that kind of seeing what we want and then being able to actually go and have an action off the back of that. So yeah, I'm really excited by it, and I think lots of brands are already starting to like move very quickly into this space, and that's being enabled by the different platforms bringing new ad formats or like tracking and all of that kind of hyping, which is really important to be able to like prove really to our brands that it's working, and social commerce is really important for the future of brands and commerce.
Amazing. I think that's super clear and gives me a very good idea. And I guess my sort of seeing that from the agency side or the consumer side and the industry side, I'm curious to know, Luca, from your vantage point, when you have a new technology, in this instance, social commerce, do you think it fundamentally changes your view of strategy, or do you think it simply accentuates what you've been doing to date already?
I think it's helping us to get wider. We think that we are sport, we are football, but we want also to be relevant in the cultural land. So the digital asset helps us to inspire more people, utilize other brands, to go to social media, for example, or to sell something together in an area that are not linked to my core business, that is football. I give you a quick example. What we're going to do on next Monday, actually, 3 days, we did a collaboration with the brand Bradley. If you're aware of that, but Bradley is probably one of the most brands that produce a surfboard. And with them, we have an authentic connection, because one of the best surfer in Italy is Inter Milan. So with him and them, we develop a product, a small capsule that is going to give us opportunity to create traffic on our e-commerce and their e-commerce. But the most important thing is to give a new experience, great content, specific content that people are going to see on our social media, and then it's going to see also in the Bradley social media. So two words got together, and this thing is for me is the opportunity for a football team to grow and go in the future. Be contaminated from some other sport enthusiasts. They are not football enthusiasts, but they are sport enthusiasts. For us, is important. And then also as an aspect in terms of monetization, because we create a small capsule of product, we create a surfboard with Inter logo. So then you can see my logo in a different environment to transmit some value they are representing my team, but with different notes. So I think it's important that the digital asset accelerates the opportunity to do those kind of contamination.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for that, Luca. Renata, I have a sort of similar, well, not similar, a question that's associated with also the rise of social commerce for you, because at eBay, it's an interesting thing, right? Because as a platform, you also buy and sell. And I'm curious to know if you've had to pivot strategy with the rise of social commerce, where folks needn't leave the familiarity of their social platforms, where they also share content. But do you feel there's room for both, essentially?
Yeah, I do. I think as I mentioned, like social and culture inform of a lot of our on-site activities. So it's very synergist for us. And I think we go where our customers are, right? So we've embraced a lot of social commerce in many ways. We've launched a lot of vertical handles. So in motors and collectibles, trading cards, sneakers, watches, to really support those businesses on our core accounts. I think we were one of the first, if not the first, major brand to launch like a TikTok commerce campaign. And in terms of our luxury categories, we created a lot of Gen Z focused on social content and series, and created that opportunity to address the Gen Z audience, which I think distinguishes us from other platforms. And at that point, we're also connecting with our consumers where they are with, experimenting with live commerce. We've done that and with creating cards to buy and sell and interact, with our customers. The hosted video form, or those video stream, I should say. And I know it's a relatively new format that we're using to really test and learn and optimize that user experience ahead of that the trend that's coming more to the West. So.
Fair enough. I feel like I'm sleeping on eBay. I got some Pokemon cards at home that I'm sure I could dig up that I feel could be worth something. I'm going to go look into that. All right. I think, again, for you, I want to sort of talk a little bit about, the world that you're in. You're currently in the space. You're working for eBay, obviously. And curious to sort of get a sense of your future outlook. And I think it's safe to say that, we talked a lot about it today, right? We talked about sustainability. We talked about buyers and sellers and how communities are so important. I feel like eBay is quite uniquely positioned to sort of bring together all those things. Of course, you have a huge second-hand market there, and you're harnessing sort of like the pulling together of those two worlds, namely community and commerce. I'm curious, though, like, where do you see things going from here for eBay? What are some of the things that you're focusing on with your team, for example?
Yeah, so in general, I think we're continuing to expand support of these focus categories and just grow our existing audience and engage communities, especially Gen Z, who are seeing, especially embrace the pre-owned luxury market and sustainability in a really big way. And then as a social team, we're continuing to expand and test new formats and omni-channel in just meaningful ways, like these, real in-person events, as I mentioned, Discord, AR, live shopping, and more. And we just have a lot more in store for 2023. I'm super excited.
That's awesome. I think, Luca, I have a similar question for you. What's next besides sort of taking home the championships, obviously? Tell me, Luca, what's next for Inter Milan?
That's very important. If we win some trophy, that's the most important.
I'm sure.
But apart of that, I think the next step, I said at the beginning, we are in a journey, so we just started. And for me, it's to create a new way of revenue. And I think I want to give a new experience online, to buy and to utilize the passion of Inter through digital assets. To give you an example, like NFTs, Metaverso, there are two elements that we want to combine inside our digital platform. And that is like something that we are working right now. So you can imagine, we can improve our merchandise, we can improve, develop collaboration with some designer. But then we want to give opportunity to buy something physical, but also something digital, like an NFTs. Everything through our eCommerce, everything through our platform. So that's what we are doing right now.
Awesome. Sounds incredibly exciting. You know what? It just came up just as you were talking. Both of you mentioned it to in some varying guise. The focus on Gen Z, and I guess my question to both of you maybe is, how is that? Is that simply like everyone's going, okay, this is for obvious reasons the future generation, of course, of shoppers and fans for that matter. I'm curious to know like how that's impacted your conversations and your focus as marketing and revenue leaders in the business. And maybe Renata, you could start with yourself with that question. Has it shaped it a lot, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely made us have a different lens on some of the communications and marketing that we do. And it's definitely proposed a new challenge, but I think we've definitely embraced that challenge, especially with a lot of our content and creator investment in TikTok. And it's been super exciting to essentially create a whole new meaning to what eBay is for like a new generation of shoppers. But as I mentioned, like we've seen that, for example, that we've seen like 34% of respondents in like a study, named sustainability for Gen Z as a major reason of engaging with commerce, right? So we are seeing them really increase the attitude around sustainability and eBay being the perfect platform for that. So it's very much intuitive and makes sense, and it's been an exciting challenge to tackle.
Awesome. I think Anusha, one of our previous speakers who focused on sustainability, would love to hear that. And Luca, what about at Inter Milan? Are you focusing very heavily on that as an audience? Has it influenced the way that you see your efforts in the world?
For sure, we started 3 years ago on that. The fact we changed the logo and slightly also the color of the logo, because we did a lot of researches about what they want, the Gen Z, and then what they want in future funds for consumer for us. So we try to create something more simple, but something that speak again about our tradition. And on the other hand, is we try to create and find also partners that go in that direction. An example is Socios, so one of our partners that creates fan token. And with them, we see that the fan token, the Web 3.0, so the gamification, are a world that Gen Z generation spend most of the time. So sport have to go there. So they need to consume our game. They need to consume our activities through new platforms. So I can think about the fan token, or I can think about a web game. And with this new technology, we have opportunity to give access to experience. Because at the end of the day, we are our product is physical. Our product is an experience in the stadium, experience touching, seeing, taking pictures with the player. The fan token is the digital token that gives opportunity to people around the world to get closer, decide something. For example, the Sun fan token decided the color of the bus, take our playbooks every single day in a different place of the world, what look like. So then people feel like closer to the club. People feel like part and consume the sport in a different way. So this is for sure, we already started on that, and then some partners have sport business, sport might be older like us, to go and get closer to Gen Z in a quicker time.
Amazing. Luca, thank you so much for that. Very clear. All right, I want to sort of end on two notes. One is, I think I always love to provide some tangible advice to folks tuning in. And then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for some questions at the end as well. So, Luca, maybe start with you. Do you have any advice for folks who may be watching that may be interested, or that are interested in either revamping, given that you've also just gone on this journey this year with your e-commerce platform? So, advice for folks revamping their e-commerce strategies or pivoting their revenue streams to e-commerce. What are some words of advice for those folks?
Well, I just say something probably obvious, but for everyone, that want to revamp their business or to create a new business, for me, the number one rules is be meaningful with your community, be meaningful with your fans. So that is work always. whatever you're gonna do after, you know, if you have a new logo or you create a new e-commerce, it's gonna work, you know. But to be meaningful, to understand who is your audience, for me is everything starting from there. Then of course after, you know, you need to. I like to look outside my business, so I look outside sport, and you can learn like from me, from my side. For example, you can learn what eBay is doing or other company on the digital business are doing to attract new consumer. So that's what we're doing right now. So that's my no advice, but that's what if it was like 19 now, that's what I like to do.
I think that's sound advice. Be meaningful with what you do and say. Of course, I'll take that any day. Renata, given sort of of course you have a broader marketing focus, but you also have some history in social. I thought I'd ask you the same question. So advice for folks, but when it comes to their social media strategies, I was curious to know if you had any advice.
Yeah, I think you know, absolutely knowing your customer and industry has been super helpful, especially working across several categories myself. You know, being in an always testing mindset, being clear about what you want to learn, and honestly just listening. I mean, so many of the campaigns that I've worked on have really just been like a lot of responses to like burning questions I think I've seen, and a lot of my content strategies have really catered to things that like add value to our audience's feed and the content they want to consume, really via like education, inspiration, or like participation. So I think, yeah, creating that shared value, absolutely. And I will actually take this advice, and I'm absolutely going to look outside my industry.
Yeah.
Really get more.
Fair enough. I think we could always probably all kind of open up the aperture a little bit and stop doing things so myopically from our day-to-days, right? And Ali, similarly to you, could you give us from your vantage point, sort of, I know you deal with many, many brands in your day-to-day, a few themes brands can focus on and use today?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm going to repeat some of what Luca and Renata said, which is no bad thing. I think maybe 3 themes. I think the first is make the most of platform innovations. They're moving so quickly, and there's always a new format or something to test. So I think sticking close to that innovation and being a first mover, testing and learning, understanding what works, like they're there to make social commerce like successful, and they're innovating to make that happen. And being a brand that can be involved in that, you can have first mover advantage. You also learn lots, which is great. So that. The second is the social part of social commerce is all around people, right? And those people are creators. So they're creating content on social platforms. So I think focusing on creators, who they are, they're your biggest advocate, but they're also your biggest risk, because they're very honest with their audiences about how they're finding interacting with your brand. So, and then that kind of alludes to the third one, which is like listen more than you speak. So like use it as a platform to like understand what's working, understand what's not working, and adapting the way that you approach campaigns, but also your business in a way that like is future-proofing your brand. And I think sticking close to creators when you're doing that allows you to have more of an open dialogue, and be able to kind of break down those barriers between your brand and your community, because that makes you, I think, ultimately successful. So those 3 things, which I do think are reiterating what Luca and Renata has said already.
I love the fact that we're packaging it into the power of 3. Always good. I like it. All right, I have a few questions, and we have a few minutes left for our talk, so I'm going to go in, jumping into those questions from our audience. So our first question is eBay also looking at Gen Alpha? So the oldest are now teens and have been estimated to spend more than Gen Z online. It's a question from our audience. Gen Alpha.
Yes. So I would say yes. You know, absolutely. Always looking at, again, like the way the marketplace is changing, and also we're always like ready to adapt and, you know, invite again the challenge of like a new audience and new behaviors, which again like informs so much of the behavior that we see on our site, but also on our other channels. So I absolutely, I think we're super excited to like continue adapting and, meeting the challenge. And I think our social team does like a really wonderful job of that. Like essentially to Ali's point, like embracing those different like channels and, working with different creators that we're seeing these new generations really engage with has been an exciting trend that's really shaped a lot of our social strategies alone. So absolutely.
Awesome. I might actually ask Ali the same question. Like, are you being confronted with that challenge yourself? The focus of Gen Alpha, and is that sort of like, it's just the name of the game, I suppose, to some degree. But I'm curious to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And your question earlier was really interesting, like why the focus on Gen Z? Yes, they're the future. But I think one of the other reasons which like young audiences are so interesting for brands is they tend to move quicker than other audiences. So in a way, it's not Gen Z or Gen Alpha. It's actually where is the future and how can we keep up? So I remember when we first started looking at TikTok and we were analyzing the audience that was spending their time on TikTok, and it was super young, right? And it was dance crazes, and that's what it was. And now, 2 years later, it's one of the most successful platforms for a brand that we work with whose audience is in their 30s and 40s. It's actually performing better than TV and radio and other through-the-line channels. So I think we should absolutely focus on Gen Alpha, Gen Z, but it's around like, where are people spending their time? How can we reach them in an authentic way, which is exciting, regardless of what generation they might fit into?
Yeah, fair enough. Like it feels like there's, of course, the audience focus, then you've got your platform innovation, taking advantage of that as a changing landscape. But if I were to borrow something from what Luca said, not losing the meaning that you take towards it, right? I think, Luca, you also mentioned for Inter Milan, I thought that was an interesting anecdote. I'm not sure if many people know that, but Inter sort of started as a team that was based on international players being able to play for that team in Milan, right, Luca?
Yes, correct. That time there was another team that I can mention, AC Milan. And AC Milan was a team only for Italian citizens. So there was a group of gentlemen that want to play football, and they decided to create a new football team called International. So, that's for us is so the modern value, to be international, to be open, to be, broad for any kind of audience. And that's what we try to do right now. The question back to, for example, to football, of course, the Gen Z are the future. If we want to grow in the future, we want to be a global brand, we want to increase our revenue. You need to focus on that, you need to study them and change, all the marketing tools of the company for that focus, for that aim. On the other hand, like for us, for example, we also create experience only for, let me say, older people, older fans. So like, I think you mentioned, we call Inter Club, so they are aggregation momentum for most of them are older people. They go there, they watch the game, they buy merchandise, but they're not digital. They are less digital than the other generation, but they are important in any case because the future, the Gen Z represents the future buyers or the revenue in 10 years time maybe, and they can for sure, even right now, persuade the older people to move, to buy tickets, to buy merchandise. But on the other hand, you need to see also the actual momentum. So it's important to diversify your strategy and to try to offer experiences and products in a different way.
Awesome. All right, I guess just one maybe parting question for you. We talked about sustainability a bit and sort of like the needs, and you mentioned yourself, Renata, the sort of focus on, that the Gen Z audience, who are sort of a big audience in the eBay target group now, are prioritize sustainability as one of their decision-making, in their decision-making. I was curious to know, like, is there also, are you seeing that on your side as well, Luca? Is that a topic that comes up as for fans and for merchandising as well?
for sure, like sustainability is the future for any kind of company in any kind of sport, any kind of industries. In sport, for example, we are always asked, what does it mean to be sustainable as a football team? So we are thinking right now a different approach. We are a little bit advanced on developing sustainable merchandise. For example, with our partner Nike, since 2 years, our jersey, the football team jersey, is produced with recycled plastic bottles. But then we want to step up. We want also to create also all our merchandise on sustainable and organic materials. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we are working on carbon zero for the broadcasting area. This football team has lots of elements linked, look like a TV. So we have a TV, we have a media company inside the football club. So that's there, for example, we are improving in terms of the classes, we're improving our server. We want to minimize the emission of carbon. So that's the second area. And the third area that we are thinking is a bigger project, but that's how to consume less plastic during the match game. That's another momentum. Nice. Unfortunately, like the consume of drink, water, any kind of fast food that the people consume during the game, before and after the game is a problem. So we have ideas. We are working with some specific company to develop something that can help. We can give something to the community. That's important.
Nice. Well, maybe glass bottles is not a good idea for fans in the stadium. All right. Well, look, I just wanted to say we've run out of time now. Thank you so much, all three of you, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. Luca, I'm expecting an invitation to the next game so that I too can lose my voice. Renata, I'm going to hit you.
You're all invited.
Renata, I'm going to hit you up about those Pokemon cards. And Ali, I'm sure I'll see you very soon for a cup of coffee. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.